Hello. Welcome to Stirring the Pod podcast, a podcast all about discussing controversial food subjects, historical aspects of food, and pretty much everything else food and cooking related. Let me start by introducing my co-hosts. First up, we have Mr. Barbecue Brand, our resident pitmaster and a past guest on Food Network's Barbecue USA. Welcome, Barbecue Brand.
Thank you for having me. What's cooking, everybody? Let's get it popping.
Next up, we have Mr. Brandon D., our food science nerd and Southern food expert. Welcome, Brandon D.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. We're about to get this kicked off and have a good time, as usual.
I am KCP, your host and cookie queen. Tonight's topic is all about rice. From jambalaya to that dirty, we cover all the aspects of these famous Louisiana rice dishes. How y'all doing tonight, guys?
Doing well.
Feeling good, looking good.
Yeah.
All that.
So we're going to talk about jambalaya first tonight because I feel like that's the least controversial of the famous rice dishes of Louisiana.
Yeah, there's a lot of these things everybody has kind of their own take on jambalaya. There's Creole jambalaya, there's Cajun jambalaya, there's seafood jambalaya. There's people who don't believe you should mix seafood with meat, which I think is ridiculous. You can mix anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
If it tastes good, it is good. There's all kinds of twists and turns and variations of this. It's really, but we have to think of what the dish really is. It's starch and some meat and some scrap meat, and usually this is not like a rich person's dish. This is a stretch dish. You're trying to stretch food a ways, make something that's good to conserve a lot of people. This is why jambalaya is actually one of the most popular dishes to serve at large gatherings, because you can make a lot for not a whole lot.
Right. So the theory of the history of jambalaya says that it was created when Spanish settlers settled in New Orleans trying to make paella, substituting tomatoes for the hard-to-find saffron. It later took on more French characteristics when they started adding like andouille. So let me ask you something. What's the difference between Cajun jambalaya and Creole jambalaya?
In this case, believe it or not, it's tomatoes. Cajun jambalaya typically does not have tomatoes in it. In my opinion, both versions are really good. It's really up to the skill of the person cooking it. An excellent version of both is excellent, and a bad version of both is some trash. So, I mean, if it's trash jambalaya, it's trash jambalaya. You call it Cajun Creole, I don't know, call it whatever you want. If it's trash, it's trash. If it's good, it's good. I mean, you need any more explanation than that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. And Casey, you said it too. A version of paella, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All of these rice dishes are meant to serve a lot of people. All are derivatives of the other. So jambalaya is really meant to be a rice dish that stretches across multiple people, to be able to feed multiple people, a lot of people if you're having a gathering. So it's poverty food. But, there's a right way to do it. And I feel like there's a wrong way to do it. I'm very opinionated on this particular subject. So
absolutely,
we're going to get into it for sure.
And I mean, these types of rice dishes are kind of worldwide, if you ask. You can find these things in the Middle East. You can find these things in Africa. I think, you have like jollof rice from Nigeria. All this stuff has kind of influences on all. So the Middle Eastern rice dishes, Indian rice dishes. I mean, rice is a cheap way to stretch, fat and protein.
Absolutely.
Because it actually the fat actually attaches to the rice, and it carries a lot of flavor. So.
But you have to make sure that you are seasoning that fat really good, because that rice can mellow out your dish very quickly if you're not
right.
Absolutely.
Rice absorbs a lot of seasoning.
Oh yeah. So the meats that are usually used in jambalaya include pork, ham, sausage, chicken, shrimp, crawfish, oysters, turtle, duck, alligator. Pretty much anything. Many recipes call for the Holy Trinity to be used. But interesting enough, Miss Leah Chase does not use celery in her jambalaya recipe. And Chef John Folse doesn't use green bell pepper. He uses red bell pepper in his recipe. So everyone has their own like little special take on it, but the basics are all there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is really a dish that you should make your own. It really
pretty
is.
much.
Mm-hmm.
But there's limitations to that.
Correct.
Bad versions of this out there.
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah, it still has to be good.
Right.
So, I understand what you're doing.
So your ingredients are basically your holy trinity, your onions, your bell peppers, your celery or not, you know, garlic, those kinds of things, and rice, obviously, and some kind of protein in there. I don't see any recipe, or I've never heard of anybody with any salt putting beans in their jambalaya.
Nope.
No. That's
no.
The red beans and rice, different dish.
Totally
There's no
different.
There is never in any place in Louisiana, even in the north, which is a different state, you know, I've never seen beans in a jambalaya. That is bizarre.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you all this right now. I am all about fusion. I love fusion. Mm-hmm. And Louisiana, America in general, is all about fusion, right? We'll take one cuisine and fuse it with another cuisine to come up with something unique. And I'm all about that. I love it. But we're not about to fuse red beans and rice with Cajun rice or jambalaya or whatever you're trying to make. That's not a thing. Don't do that.
It's conflicting principles, man. Conflicting. Yeah. This is conflicting ideas, you know.
Because the whole thing behind jambalaya is you're cooking your raw rice in the fat and the gravy that you're making from your meats, right? So adding like a bean is adding an additional starch to that mix, and that's not what you want at this point. When you do red beans and rice, that's cooked separately and then added onto your rice when you serve it. It's not cooked together. So you have all those extra starches that would just make this a disaster, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I just asked this question, just why?
Yeah.
What does that add to anything?
And it adds more moisture. Like it just doesn't work. That
jambalaya can be tricky with moisture. So that's a real thing. You know, how much moisture you have, how you cook your rice. I am not a jambalaya maker. I don't make jambalaya very often. I can. It's a tricky blend with the liquid and the rice, and you have to make sure you cook that properly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and call out who we, because some of y'all might be a little confused right now.
Just call this dude out.
So there's this person on YouTube. His channel is Barbecue Southern Style, I believe it is. This is not the Southern Style. I don't know what style this is.
No,
but it ain't the Southern style. And he made a Cajun rice. Is that what it was called? A Cajun dirty rice that he supposedly made that had some rough cut vegetables and some red beans in it. Yeah, and the rice wasn't dirty. No, and the dish didn't look good.
It looked terrible.
And the beans look raw. And the vegetables look uncooked. And the whole thing was a mess. And all this shit was bad.
So, how did I describe it when I saw it the first time? Barbecue brand.
I sent KCP a picture of this dish, and she said she could smell the raw, and I knew exactly what she meant. And you will too when I put this picture up when I edit. Oh, this is not good, people.
It's bad.
Please don't do these things.
It looks like he took a can of red kidney beans, put them in a colander or a strainer, rinsed them off, and placed them on his dish as like a garnish. They look.
I watched the video and I watched him cook, and it still looked raw. I don't understand how it looked like it looked after he did what he did. But Brandon D, I'm gonna let you go right now. I just wanted to tell all of the people happy Mardi Gras, because it is Mardi Gras. I got my Mardi Gras cup right now.
There you go.
I'm sipping a little bit. We going in tonight because I'm not playing with y'all.
I'm gonna say
we are not dealing with this.
Yeah.
Louisiana foods has a lot of controversy in it, and there's a lot of separation between Cajuns and and Creoles, and who's right and who's wrong. And rarely is there something. There's a unique moment when something just offends both traditions so deeply, and this dish it's just nonsense.
It hurts.
This flies in the face of everything Cajun, everything Creole. It flies in the face of everything that makes cooking sense. It's just nonsense.
Those onions don't even look like they in the sweat phase.
Look, and there's a place for rice. There's a place for rice and beans. Jamaican rice and peas is delicious.
Absolutely.
Excellent dish. Excellent. Fantastic. Red beans and rice, delicious. I grew up eating beans and rice, but not in dirty rice. That's rice dressing. That's a totally different thing right there. This is not even, what is this? I was like, when I first saw this, excuse me, I was like, what in the blue fuck is this, man? This is terrible.
This is just,
it's bad.
It's bad. I'm
gonna quote my buddy Jason Pettis on this, and he's absolutely right. A lot of times you want to try to create your own dish, right? You want to create something. You want to be unique, and I'm all about that too. I will never knock anybody for being unique and trying their own thing, but when you completely neglect someone's culture and you just jump out the window and film a YouTube video claiming that this is something that is not,
right,
and people are prideful about that particular dish, you can't do that. So you're going to deserve everything that you get. Every backlash, you're going to deserve every single thing that you get.
Cultural appropriation, man. There you go.
At the worst part.
This dude didn't even spell the word Cajun right in his title to this video.
Yeah. But there's another point to this. Like when we talk about the Trinity, guys, when we talk about onions, celery, and bell pepper, and then the Pope garlic, right? But you don't add garlic because you can burn it when you're cooking those.
Right.
Correct.
The Trinity is not pico de gallo. It is not something that you sprinkle on after your food is cooked. It's not. Pico de gallo has its place. Hey, look, I got a taco. Let me put some pico on it. The Trinity is not the Cajun version of pico de gallo. This is something that is cooked down to form the base of your meal. And it's cooked down. It's basically obliterated. It doesn't exist. You can't see the final product. The onions are gone. The bell peppers are gone. It's been cooked so much. It is melded into everything.
It's a process.
It is not something we sprinkle on. It's the base of our food, and this base is cooked. It's like basically the Spanish or the Spanish Caribbean Mexican version of sofrito, South American sofrito. Sofrito is a base that is cooked down to make your food. You cook sofrito down. You cook Trinity down. You cook mirepoix down. This is not to be seen. It's a background. It's like the bass in music. It's in the background, it's the thing that everything supports everything.
Preach.
It's not to be seen.
Go in
at all.
Keep going.
No, but and another thing is like your dice. Your dice is super important. I want you to think to yourself, if you ever seen any type of fine cooking or any type of restaurant cooking where they had a really rough chop on these types of vegetables that they're serving to people. It doesn't exist, man. It's always a medium to fine dice, medium and below. You cannot have a rough chop and make jambalaya. You do not want to see chunks of bell peppers in your jambalaya. That is a fail.
Think about any cooking show that you've ever seen. What's one of the first things, especially if it's a series where you're watching multiple episodes, think about one of the first things that they ever make those chefs do, or those aspiring chefs do. Show your knife work. Why? Yep. Why is it important? Think about that. Exactly what Brandon D said, because you're not supposed to rough chop everything and throw it in and hope that it cooks and tastes good. You're supposed to have fine dices. You're supposed to have all of your things symmetrical. Everything's supposed to look right and be small enough to where you can cook it down and you can give that process to break everything down to where it's almost nothing and give that base.
Right.
Don't rough chop your vegetables and throw it in a dish and claim that it's something.
No.
Come on, man.
No.
Just
Look,
think.
Yes. So we aren't all like, not everyone is great at knife skills, right? I know I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm okay. I'm not gonna say I do the best job, but let me tell y'all: go on Amazon, buy something called a Vidalia chopper. Shout out to Vidalia chopper.
Yeah.
Don't get the off-brand. Get the real one. It will make your life so much easier. It's
You're right.
literally made by
Barbecue
angels.
Southern style. Go get you a Vidalia chopper, please.
Look,
Don't chop that no more with that knife.
I use it a lot. I can do perfectly fine chops with a knife. I can do it, but I'm also kind of lazy sometimes, and I'm like, that Vidalia chopper's clean, and
look, you
I've
can
never cut myself with it. Just saying.
look. You could cut an onion in probably like 30 seconds.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Quarter it.
Scissor.
Yeah, that's it. And then you
It's-
can
It
get out
works.
some aggression too, because you got to slap it down.
Yeah, you got to hit it. You got to want it. So it's a time saver, and it gives you very consistent chops. It's great. I love
That's
using
a
it.
great
If I'm trying to put on a show, if I'm doing a private chef gig or something like that, then I'm gonna show my knife skills. But at home, when I'm trying to get something done,
Right.
that's the tool right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a time and place for showing off, and then there's a time and place for, hey, look, I just got to get this done. And the chop wizard, Vidalia chop wizard, just gets it done.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, this is and also the ratio of onion to peppers to celery is important too. It's 2 parts of onion, 1 part of bell pepper, whatever pepper you use, and 1 part of celery. If you use too much pepper, you're going to wreck your dish. It's going to take on a bitter quality because bitter peppers are naturally have a bitter flavor, and too much celery will kind of overpower things. Onion, see, this is the thing. People think this is like pico de gallo. This is the onion is cooked. The more you cook onions, the more they mellow out. So the onions are real mellow. It's not going to have a strong onion flavor. It's going to have a deep savory flavor from the onions. Mm-hmm. And the onions are your savoring element. The peppers are your bittering element. Mm-hmm. And your celery is like your meat intensifier. Mm-hmm. So celery intensifies the flavor of meats. Any type of meat, especially like beef. Celery pairs well with beef because celery makes meat. It enhances meat flavors.
It really does.
I just want to ask you guys. So I know we're kind of like blending the different dishes when we're talking about them right now. So dirty rice versus rice dressing. Do you guys know what the difference is? Like according,
just one quick. I just want to, because I don't know if we explained the difference between Creole and Cajun jambalaya. Oh. Mm-hmm. But a Cajun jambalaya is an onion based braised meat dish, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts by cooking onions way down, a lot of onions, browning them way down, braising meat, making like a braise with that, and then cooking rice in that. Usually it's sausage and pork, sometimes seafood. But it's more likely to be a pork and sausage, or chicken and sausage. Mm-hmm. A Creole jambalaya is usually going to have like a tomato base, and it's going to have probably seafood, shrimp and sausage. It could have crab. It could have other things in it too. It could have oysters. It could have anything really. It doesn't matter. But that has more of like a tomato base. The seasonings are rough. I would say I don't think there's much a difference in seasoning. Mm-hmm. Both styles of seasoning, which have a little bit of variety, maybe variety. Maybe Creole seasoning's a little bit more herby. But those herbs would also work in any Cajun dish as well. It wouldn't change the outcome of it. So
yeah,
that's the real difference between those two jambalayas. So
yeah, I definitely agree.
Honestly, they both have their own merits. They're both delicious. Mm-hmm. A good version of both is excellent. A bad version of one or the other can be terrible. So it's all about the skill of the cook. It's all about that. It has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the dish at all. Is it executed correctly or not? And if it's not, it's not good. If it's good, it's great. Mm-hmm. So I don't really have a preference. I don't really cook jambalaya. It's not my thing. So if somebody cooks me jambalaya and it's delicious, well, I appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah, I cook jambalaya, a good bit. So I'll usually cook a nice good Cajun jambalaya if I'm cooking it. If I'm going to go more of the Creole jambalaya, I'm just going to make a paella. And just because I can stretch those flavors a little bit further, I can give you a little bit more with a paella, because I can, I can throw in some piquillo peppers. I can, I have some saffron I can throw in there. And a lot of people think paella is really more of, there's clams, there's scallops in it. There's all of these different things in it, but you can make paella anything that you want, just like you can make jambalaya anything you want. So I make a chicken and sausage paella.
Whatever's accessible.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you have, but just having a few more flavors in there that will really help to kind of help it stand out from something else. So yeah, if I'm going to cook something along those lines, it's going to be a paella. If I'm going to make a Cajun jambalaya, it's going to be a Cajun jambalaya, and it's not going to just be salt rice. It's going to be a lot more flavors in there, cooked down. The dish is going to have a little bit of it's not going to be wet like a gravy, but it's not going to be just salt with some rice on, rice with some salt on it.
Right. And you bring up an important point, because with jambalaya, with this dish, it's very easy to make like a Cajun style jambalaya, and all you taste is salt and smoke. And that's really, so it could just be, all you'll take is salt, smoke. It takes a little bit, it takes some herbs to kind of lift that, it takes like some green onion, some parsley, it takes some herbs to kind of lift that out, because it can be real heavy, especially if you're making like a pork jambalaya, which is, pork requires a lot of salt and a lot of seasoning. And then, you're going to need some parsley you need some freshness to kind of lift that jambalaya out. So some spice, some cayenne pepper it's really important to have some heat. It's really important to have a little bit of herby quality to it, maybe a little bit of thyme, a little bit of, you can use some green onion. You can use like marjoram or oregano, just to give it just to lift those heavy flavors out. Yeah. Because otherwise it's just salt and smoke. And that's the same problem with like red beans. Red beans can just, all you can taste is salt and smoke. So it's really important in jambalaya to have a little bit of heat in it. Really helps elevate the dish.
Absolutely.
I think
completely agree with that.
Going back to, what do y'all think the main differences are between dirty rice and rice dressing?
This is a muddy topic.
I'm
gonna let Brandon go with that.
This is according to the internet.
Yeah, right. According to Google.
I just would like to know what other people think are the differences between dirty rice and rice dressing, because, man, I see dirty rice, I hear about dirty rice, and all it is they're putting meat and rice together, and I don't know if they're trying to make those two things just meld together organically with a little bit of seasoning, and they're calling it dirty rice. Like, there's nothing dirty about that. It's just rice, and you threw some meat in it.
All right.
Meat rice.
Meat rice.
Meat rice.
All right. So let me read this to y'all, because this shocked me. The main difference between dirty rice and rice dressing is that rice dressing is generally made with ground beef, pork, venison, whereas dirty rice is made with organ meats such as livers, hearts, and giblets. The dish takes its name from the dirty appearance of the finely ground up meats that they give to the rice. Essential ingredients in both dirty rice and rice dressing include the Holy Trinity: onion, celery, green pepper, also garlic, and some kind of fat such as bacon drippings or lard. Beyond that, flavor and texture can vary greatly depending on what's available to add to the pot. Parsley and or chopped green onions are common garnishes. So this is exactly the opposite of what I thought.
Completely opposite of what we know as rice dressing down here.
Exactly.
Right. But see, the problem is that if you talk to anybody, I've done this at work, because I had a catering gig. I told them what I was cooking for. We had a little Zoom meeting for work. They asked me what I was cooking. Told them what I was cooking. Came up to the rice dressing part, and they were like, "What the hell is rice dressing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, y'all from up north. It's dirty rice, right? Oh, okay. Nobody up north knows. Then I promise you, nobody up north is putting organs in their dirty rice.
No
That's
way.
rice dressing. That is Southern Louisiana rice dressing.
I agree.
Now, when I think of dirty rice, like I'm not talking about like the generic like restaurant version, the stuff that people make in their homes. It's really a term that's used more in southeastern Louisiana than south central and southwestern Louisiana, where we refer to as rice dressing. Where you go to New Orleans, it's dirty rice. If somebody in New Orleans makes you dirty rice, like if they're like a true like New Orleanian, that would definitely have gizzards in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It will have innards in it. And the dishes they're based on the same concept, right? It is a stretch dish where we're mixing starch with meat, scraps of meat and organ meat and offal in fat to make something that stretches to feed a bunch of people. This is the same thing. So what do you call it? Does it really matter that much?
Yeah.
There might be a slightly... I know that people in like where we're from, like I'm South Central Louisiana, there's a different technique that we may use, how we cook things. I mean, there may be differences in technique, but the concept is the same. It's the same concept. We're trying to stretch something. We got organ meats that nobody really likes to eat whole. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take a little big piece of boiled chicken liver and eat it, right? That's why it's chopped up and put into something else. So... we're taking stuff that we don't want, cooking in a way that makes it delicious, combining with things that make it tone down those gamey flavors and makes it into something delicious. That's what we're trying to do here. So whether you call it dirty rice or rice dressing, I really don't care. My question is, can you cook it?
And in my opinion, perfectly. Right.
In my opinion, I think when you're doing a recipe, especially I've looked at a lot of recipes online on YouTube for dirty rice, and it's just meat and rice. I think you're really missing the origin of the dish and the purpose of the dish, and you're missing a lot out of it. Now, I don't know if everybody wants to handle raw chicken livers and chop them up and make dirty rice. That's fine, but I think that the traditional way to make it should be presented is like, this is what dirty rice is, and I have my way of making it. I mean, I learned it from my grandmother how to make rice dressing. She called it rice dressing. It definitely had organ meat in it. It was beef and beef, chicken liver, and chicken gizzards, and sometimes chicken hearts if she had them.
So B, let's talk a little bit about why, because we're gonna have some people that's gonna listen to this and say, okay, well, I really don't want chicken gizzards and chicken hearts and all of these things in my dish.
Right.
Why are you putting that in there? What does it add into the dish? Right.
Right. So this is a good question. So what you're really doing is you're getting a depth of flavor beyond meat. It's beyond. It's not just meat. It's a much richer, darker flavor. If that's the right word, darker flavor. And the way you do it, like a Cajun South Central, because people look. Cajuns and Creoles from the same area generally cook the same things. I'm gonna tell you, like my grandmother's gumbo. She's a Creole. My grandmother was definitely a straight up Creole. Both my grandmothers are Creoles. Their gumbo tastes pretty much like the gumbos. There were very excellent versions of both. Tasted like gumbos that are made around that area. They did not do any. I've never did any of my grandmothers or my mom ever crack a can of tomatoes and put it in a roux gumbo. That is just never happened. With the rice dressing, whatever you call it, we call it rice dressing. That's what we called it. So Cajuns and Creoles kind of in the same area kind of basically cook the same thing. It's a regional thing. So what we did is it's a lot of onions, it's peppers, and I think my grandmother put celery and garlic. Doesn't matter, But really, she ground all this. We did the gizzards where she would she basically peel the silver skin off the gizzards. She would grind the gizzards up. She'd grind the livers up. She'd take the ground meat. It usually had a little bit of ground pork. You can use like a breakfast sausage is actually a good use of it. Because the sage in the sausage tends to tame down the gamey flavors. So she would take, you could use my mom uses breakfast sausage, beef, and then all the dressing mixes and stuff with all the innards in it. And you cook this down for a long time where you're cooking it down. And basically you're just browning the ground meat over and over and over again. You're browning it against the bottom. And when it gets brown, you add liquid and you just keep repeating this process until you get it really dark. And then you add cooked rice, mix it together, and ta-da, rice dressing. And add green onions to it. Because you have to have green onions and rice dressing.
Let me tell you something that we do down here in Southern Louisiana that most people don't, and they don't know why. What Brandon just described is one of the things that we do so well, and it's really just being able to concentrate flavors. Right. Cooking things down to a point to where it's almost non-existent. And but it's right, it's in that window. It's right before the point to where it's too much or unusable. I don't want to say non-existent, but it's to the point to where it's almost unusable, but it's not. It's perfect. We've concentrated flavors. You will see recipes online. There's millions of recipes online that will tell you to, take some onions and take some celery, sweat it out for 10 minutes.
Not enough.
We don't do that down here in Southern Louisiana. If you see a recipe that tells you to do that, it's some other dish. We cook our things down to where we are concentrating those flavors and we're building that base. And then from that base, we create something special. That's why our food is so good, because we can do things like that. Exactly. And rice dressing is no different. Most people that taste, if I would cook rice dressing, or if you would cook rice dressing for somebody that never had it and they never ate things like that, like chicken gizzards, they probably wouldn't even know that was even in there. They just would say they wouldn't care, and they wouldn't know up front, and then they wouldn't care because they would taste it and they'd say, "Wow, the flavors in here are crazy." Yeah, because we know what to do with those individual ingredients to make a whole. Right? The sum. How does that saying go? The sum of my parts are greater than the whole. Or I don't know. I said that wrong. But,
exactly.
So that's what it's all about. So when we talk about the differences between rice dressing and dirty rice, the differences vary a little bit, maybe, but it's all the same concept.
Right. And it's all about building flavors. And my friend Dave Against the Machine said this, that Cajun cooking, Creole cooking is the delicate art of learning how to burn things in a very controlled manner. It's almost, and that's what we're doing. Is I'm building up fond when I'm cooking rice dressing and I'm browning it. I'm building the fond and releasing it over and over and over and over again. I mean, this takes, I don't know how many times I do this, like 7-8 times, something crazy like that, right?
Whatever it takes, yeah.
And it's all the onions breaking down, all the meat breaking down, all that stuff browning on the bottom, and I'm just releasing it. I'll brown it, release it, brown it, release it, brown it, release it, over and over until it gets a really dark, rich color, and that really deep flavor, that ultra savory flavor that you only get from these types of dishes, where everything is just savory, and that's what the organ meat really does. It makes it just ultra savory.
I'm going to break it down for everyone that doesn't know what we're talking about. If you're listening to this from a state or an area where you're not used to cooking this way, I'm going to break it down for you right now. I want you to go and get an onion, cut that onion in half, dice that whole onion up. Take half of the onion, and I want you to saute that onion at a high heat. The other half of that onion, I want you to put on a much lower heat, and I want you to caramelize that onion, because sauteed onions and caramelized onions are very different, and I want you to taste both of them. And that is the difference between what we're talking about.
Yes. You're basically extracting all of the flavors that these things have locked within them. Like an onion, it has to cook, it has to brown, all the sugars have to release from that vegetable so that you can get these different, flavors. Like caramelized onions is one of the best flavors.
It is.
Hands down.
Lord have mercy.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what this type of cooking is we're maximizing the flavor out of minimalist ingredients. It's not really anything complicated. It's onions, it's peppers, it's celery, it's ground beef, chicken gizzards, chicken liver, chicken hearts if you have them, and some pork, some ground pork, and you're just cooking this in a way to maximize the flavor of everything and then mixing it with some starch so it stretches out.
Exactly. So I have a question, and I think this really needs to be cleared up between these two types of rice dishes. They are very similar, but you cook them very differently. Whereas jambalaya, you're cooking the rice, uncooked rice. You're cooking it in the meat, with
Correct.
the meat. You're cooking it with all of those flavors, all the, kind of the broth that all of those things create in that pot. Whereas with dirty rice, aka rice dressing, you're doing those two. You're cooking your rice separately, and then you're
Correct.
mixing them together. So that is a big difference between these two dishes. And it makes a big difference in flavor. Like when you are cooking your rice in that broth, that meat and all those vegetables that you cook down, that gets absorbed into those rice grains. Whereas the rice is a vehicle for all that meat, all those flavors. It's like a vehicle that you're mixing together. So those are the differences.
And correct. And there's a really important thing about making dressing mix when you're making this. Do not, never, ever drain the fat off of dressing mix when you're cooking it. Ever. The fat is an essential ingredient. It's like making boudin. When you make boudin, all the fat from the meat goes back into the rice. Because boudin, you don't cook boudin. Boudin and rice dressing are very similar in the way that is cooked rice mixed with the braise.
Yes.
And you're making that way. And rice dressing, you do the same. You cannot drain the fat from the meat. I know everybody will be tempted to do it, to drain all the fat from the ground beef, drain all the fat from the ground pork and everything. Don't do it. Don't stop yourself.
Right.
Please
It's very,
don't
very
do that.
important that you do. That fat is what's going to coat and flavor your rice and give your rice the right texture.
Right. That
The
fat
cooked
is
rice.
carrying the flavors, that you're going to apply to the cooked rice.
Hey, and you know what? I've actually made rice dressing risotto as well too, because it was Italian themed Friendsgiving night. I made a porchetta and I had rice dressing mix. I was like, oh yeah, we're making rice dressing risotto, and that was actually pretty good. But
That's
risotto is just a style of cooking rice, right? I just made risotto and then just put dressing mix in it. It's nothing fancy, but it came out pretty good.
It was pretty good.
They did. That's
Hell yeah.
So
it was good.
It's very important not to drain the fat off dressing mix. You cannot do it. Do not do it. It's like boudin. Boudin, when you mix boudin, all that fat goes back into the rice. Man, they don't waste a bit of it.
No.
Here's another tip I'll give you whenever you're making jambalaya or Cajun rice, dirty rice, is most Cajun dishes, Creole dishes, are heavily seasoned dishes, and it's mainly because they're rice dishes.
Right.
Don't be afraid of seasoning. I'm not saying that you have to completely over salt your stuff or over season, but you got to be a little heavy handed on some of these dishes, because that you can cook something down and create a base. Like, let's say you're making your dressing mix, right? You got your dressing mix, it tastes good. Maybe you taste a little bit like, oh, this is good. You got to go a little bit further, because you got to think when you put that rice in, especially depending on how much rice you put in. You put that rice in, it's going to mellow out, and your seasonings are going to be a little mute. So you got to be a little heavy handed. Don't be afraid of seasoning whenever you're making these dishes.
Absolutely not.
I remember seeing it was like somebody was making boudin, and they said how much salt they put. It was like 250 milligrams per pound or something like that. It's a lot.
Wow.
And by the way, sausage is like 150 to 175. So it's more because of the rice. It takes more. So with these dishes, jambalaya and especially rice dressing, it takes a lot of salt. Like when I make dressing mix, it's very, very intensely seasoned, and that's just for what it is.
Yeah, when I make sausage versus when I make like rice dressing or something, it's a vastly different.
Totally different.
Right. So I have to say this. If you are making rice dressing / dirty rice, whatever you call it, don't forget to do this. This is a major sin. Make sure that when you are cooking your rice separately, you salt that rice.
Very important.
Because nothing will fix it. Nothing will fix that. Once that rice is cooked, it's toast. It's not going to absorb any salt. It's just not gonna taste right. So always salt your rice before you cook it.
Starches have to be cooked in salt.
Have to
be.
Think,
they'll never taste right if you don't do it.
Right.
Think about the process and what you're doing. So you're taking something that's dry and you're adding liquid to it to cook it. It's saturating that starch. There's no more saturation that can really happen after it's already cooked.
Nope.
So what you're doing is whenever you put that salt in your water or your broth, whatever you're cooking your rice in, that's what your rice is absorbing. It's not going to absorb any more than that. It's already cooked. It's already saturated to the point to where it's done.
Right.
Put salt when you cook rice. Put salt.
There's no amount of salting that can correct the flavor of your unsalted rice.
No, absolutely not.
All it'll taste is salt. It'll never taste right. So you have to add salt to rice when you cook it. It's a teaspoon per dry cup of rice. That's typically a good guideline.
I saw one of these morning show, like national morning shows, where they had this chef on there making some dish, and he was like, I know what everybody says, you have to salt your rice before you cook it, but I don't think that's right.
He's wrong. He's wrong.
Bruh,
You can...
they tasting your food and they acting. They winning some Academy Award winning acting bits on this show because there ain't no way that tastes right. And he just salting the rice like Salt Baying it, like.
No, that's work.
So your salt, so your salt is an afterthought for your dish.
Exactly.
That's the problem. That's the problem with some of these chefs is that some chefs are learning the right things and some chefs are learning the wrong things. A lot of times you'll ask 12 different chefs. We had an episode saying this.
Yes.
You ask 12 chefs the same question, you probably get 12 different answers because they all have different training. Yeah. And this guy clearly went to the school of dumbassery or something.
It's just like things like there's some things you have to learn how to cook from down home cooks, from home cooks. Home cooks restaurant cooking is a style of cooking. You have to realize it's not the end all and be all of cooking because it's cooked in a restaurant. Restaurants' food is made to be cooked in a particular way for service, for quick delivery, and they can't do some things that we can do at home. Nobody wants to baby gumbo for 6 hours in a restaurant.
No.
It just doesn't work like that. There are things that home cooks do that are just a pain in the butt that people in restaurants say, we don't have time for that. Let's give somebody a different version or not even serve that. Yeah. Because we're trying to crank out dishes. We're turning over tables trying to make money. So restaurant style food, chefs are not the end all and be all of knowledge in cooking. A lot of them have great information, great advice, but salt and starch has to be salted. I'm sorry. You can fight me to death on this. I don't care.
It's just common sense.
It is.
I'm going to say this. Look,
when you think about what we just talked about.
I'm not going to brag on myself, but I'm known for making pretty good rice dishes. It's kind of my thing, right? But this is not, except jambalaya. I don't make much jambalaya, but rice has to be salted. It just has to be salted. It's just you're wasting rice. It's just cheap, but still a shame.
I thought you were going to say you're wasting life.
You were wasting people's time too.
Yeah.
Don't salt your rice, man. Salt your rice. Please salt your rice. It's so important.
Don't waste your life or your rice.
Rice must be salted.
Man, rice is one of those blank canvases too. Salt it, get a little crazy with it. You can throw. Man, I did some rice with. So if some of you are listening to me out there, I actually competed with this one time, but I did some rice with some. I made sure I salted it. I cooked it in some chicken broth. May have thrown a little bit of mushroom powder in there. That rice was damn good on its own before I put anything on it. Right. So you got to make sure that every part of your dish, if you're cooking something, every part of your dish has to come together, but it has to be something on its own too a little bit. That's the way I cook. I like things to be a little something on its own. Maybe
Right.
I think about things a little differently, but
I mean, think about this. How many nasty grits have you had in restaurants where they didn't salt them?
All of it.
Oh,
well,
my
not
gosh.
all of it.
Yeah,
99%.
Way
99% of the grits
more
I've
bad
had.
than good. Way more bad than good.
Terrible grits.
Oh, bad.
Oh,
yeah.
How y'all can't cook grits?
Look, shout out
Potatoes
to Zia's.
are the same way too.
Shout out to Zia's. Zia's has the best grits.
Zia's has great grits. Jonathan's a rub in Houston has great grits.
Right.
What else? Flying Biscuit that has great grits too.
Oh yeah, another little spot here in Houston.
Yeah, and Dallas too, I believe.
Shout out to y'all that can make grits out there in the restaurant world.
Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you
because that's a process. I made I've made grits from scratch, like some real good grits,
stone ground grits.
Yeah, that was a 2-day process.
Right. So I mean, like when I went to Jonathan's a Rub and I tasted their grits, I was like, wow, this is impressive, man, because this is grits. I'll be honest, like, man, like grits are actually pretty tricky to cook, and they can be quite difficult to cook, and it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of consideration. You can't just throw this together. You know, it's like cooking a steak, man. You get some good meat, you apply some salt and some seasoning, and you put it on the appropriate amount of heat, and you don't overcook it, and it's good on itself. But grits are something you have to work.
Right.
Grits have to be worked into shape, man. It's a process. A steak just is what it is. You know, you eat raw. Hey, I've eaten raw beef before, and guess what? It was pretty good too. Not just saying, like, raw beef by itself is pretty. I've had raw Wagyu beef, and it was pretty good just by itself. Carpaccio, good by itself. It doesn't need much. I thought you were about to say
some tartar or some.
I've
had tartar
or something.
I've had some tartar,
but there's not a whole lot that needs to be done with it. It's delicious on its own. You know, you're just enhancing the flavor with cooking and seasoning.
Yeah,
but with grits are completely inedible until you make the magic out of them. Rice is the same way. You have to make the magic with rice.
Nothing is more disappointing than ordering breakfast at a restaurant and it comes with a side of grits that looks so sad that just sit there like a little lump, like a little rock.
Watery, nasty.
No,
grits.
It's the ones that's like all gelled up, like you can use it to like lay bricks or something.
Oh, some more mortar, some more grit mortar.
Yeah, you remember that paste that kids used to. Y'all remember that paste that the kids used to eat in school? That stuff, man. That's that old paste. You know, that's
paste. What are you talking about?
You never saw that paste, that stuff that was like the glue that you kids.
Yeah, that glue paste.
Glue paste, yeah.
Oh man, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
It's actually a starch-based glue, but you know it's nasty. I mean, people would eat that.
Hey, if you cutting your grits, if you eating your grits like this,
bad.
Oh, and if they shiny too, you know, and the grits come like they're solid and they're shiny and they hold in shape.
Trust me, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about grits. I'm a barbecue people on that one on a later date because I'm a barbecue people on grits because wow, did they screw that up?
Okay,
I mean,
so
trash.
Absolutely. So speaking of barbecuing people, is there someone local that we should maybe poke a couple of little skewers at on their dirty rice? Oh, I think so.
I'm gonna say it. Look, the Cajun Ninjas version of dirty rice is basic.
It's meat rice. Let's be real.
It is. It's meat rice, and I know he's cooking it for his own taste. Him and his wife don't like organ meat, but it's not giving an accurate representation of what that dish actually is in Louisiana.
Absolutely not. No.
Because I think people need to know what the origin of it is. Like it's like tasting anything else. You need to know what this actually is and what's actually made into it.
Yeah.
And I think you should taste the original version of it before you modify it for your own liking.
Absolutely.
You see, here's my problem, and I'm gonna tell y'all this right now. I need y'all to listen to me. Here,
I'm ready to hear
it. In Southern Louisiana, we are a very prideful people. All right, we're prideful in our dishes. We're prideful in our way of life. and we want to be represented well, because historically we have been represented like shit.
Correct.
Okay? Let's call it what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. Historically, Southern Louisiana has been looked at as just shit. We haven't been represented the correct way. So when we have someone that comes out and they get very popular, we need for you to represent us the right way.
Absolutely.
We need for you to let them people know how we really do it. Regardless of how you may want to do it in your particular home. And if you want to say it and you want to present it that way, that's fine. But you need to let them people know how we do it down here.
Exactly.
Because all of us work hard to let people know how we do it down here. We're very prideful, and we don't want nobody coming in here saying, okay, you're X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Represent us the right way, and everything is all good. But
I agree.
Until then, we got to call you out on your shit.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
not an accurate representation of what the dish is. You have to accurately represent what, because people are going to take you, like, people see it on YouTube and it's gospel, right? I mean, it's like, that's how you make it. There's no organs and stuff like that. Look, there's organ meat. I'm going to tell you right now, my rice dressing is 50% meat and 50% offal, 50% organ meat. My standard recipe that I cook for, well, when I cook it for Texans, I reduce it to a third because, oh my God, it's got liver in it. And it's like, whatever, man. I serve so many people that, and they're like, oh, this is so good. What's in this? I was like, just some stuff, man,
It's a secret.
Some of that magic.
They're never gonna know,
right?
They don't know. They just eat it and they say, "Oh, that's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." Right?
Hashtag anchovy paste.
Yeah. Oh man, don't give away my secrets right there, man. You already told them about mushroom powder, which is actually a great addition to any type of savory dish. And if you buy shiitake mushroom powder, it has almost a very, very mild mushroom flavor that almost disappears into anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anchovy paste is one of my tricks, man. I mean, that's
if you made it this far, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's not traditional. I've snuck that into all kinds of dishes, and people will never know any better it's in there. It's just MSG, guys. That's all it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a savoring element. It's just MSG. Those
naturally occurring MSG, baby.
Yeah.
None of those like fish sauce or Worcestershire sauce. None of those fishy flavors stand up to heat. They all break down. Those proteins that cause that flavor get broken down by heat, and they just turn into just savoriness. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So
I wouldn't eat it raw. Eating it raw is don't do that. Don't do that to yourself.
No.
If you're gonna do something, don't do that.
Right.
Salt your rice instead.
Yeah,
please.
Exactly. Salt your rice.
Please, Lord have mercy, please.
But see, that's my own twist on things. That's my own addition, trying to intensify flavors in my own way. Mm-hmm. So, I'm being experimental. I'm doing things the way I want to do it. I learned the anchovy paste trick from some Italian cooking, right? I said, you know what? That works really good, really, really great in a bolognese. That should work in pretty much anything because all it does is add savory flavor. So,
right.
Another very prideful people. I love y'all.
Yeah.
I love y'all Italians.
They're worse than us,
prideful
man.
too.
Yeah, they're worse than us, man. They would roast me, dude, if they saw my Italian cooking.
Same.
Light,
for sure.
light me on fire. I mean, but you know what?
Salamander, flame broil your ass.
Oh, yes.
Hey, but I can make cacio e pepe though the right way.
Mm.
Yep.
Some good cacio e pepe is delicious.
Oh, that's a great dish, man.
Yes.
There's no reason to complicate that dish though. That's a great dish by itself.
Yeah.
And my carbonara is pretty by the book too.
Oh, it's bomb.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you something. What are some fusion dishes that have spawned out of like rice dressing, dirty rice? Like I know, for instance, my grandmother made the best eggplant dressing.
My mom makes an eggplant dressing too. It's a seafood eggplant dressing. Yours was a meat, right?
Meat, beef. Absolutely. I didn't even know there was eggplant in it. Like I didn't learn that until I was an adult, like maybe a few years ago. And
eggplant dressing is some serious stuff. It's really, really good. Once again, what is the flavor of eggplant that people don't like? Think about it.
The bitter.
It's Bitter.
Probably,
But
yeah.
what happens when you add it to meat?
Makes
it savory.
Yeah.
It's all about
this
is the fundamental thing of Louisiana cooking is super savory flavors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's simple flavors, but they're very very savory, and that's what you add eggplant to something and you cook. I mean, they cook the living hell out of eggplant down to where it's broken down completely. You wouldn't even know it's in there. So they cook that eggplant, and it just adds savory flavor. That's basically what it does. It's like a savoring element, and it's cheap. It goes a long way, and it stretches things out.
Absolutely.
Somebody was super impressed by my rice dressing I made recently. This was probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And they asked me if I had eggplant in it. And I was like, no, actually, I don't have eggplant in this particular rice dressing. But it's all what I put in it is it's same element, right? As that super savory element, deep flavors. And people love it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know the timeline on. So there's a lot of. I feel like every culture has their own version of their stretched starch rice dish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever type of starch you use. You know, in Scotland you have haggis, and you know, you got like scrapple and all these other things.
I recently made biryani, in traditional Indian dish, a few weeks ago. Absolutely delicious with those curry spices and saffron, and it was
so good.
Oh man, those flavors are just so good, and it's made almost like a jambalaya. It's like an Indian jambalaya.
Yep. Right.
But just with those particular flavors, right?
It's a stretch dish. It's made to stretch and feed a lot of people and stretch meat out really far. And
absolutely,
you mix meat with fat with starch, and you get a very very filling dish.
Oh yeah,
it's the same principle. You know, the Middle East has a lot of rice dishes like that too. You know,
yeah,
I can't remember what they're called, but a lot of rice dishes would you think like, you know, it's the same it's a different execution, but the same general idea. You know, they're trying to stretch food. Rice is cheap. You make in rice stores. You know, dried rice has a super long shelf life.
Yeah.
So you have dried rice, you can keep that if long as it doesn't get wet, it's never going to go bad.
Right.
So you have that rice that you can keep and stretch, and you mix that with some fat and some meat and some onions and some root vegetables, you know, whatever you have on hand, and you just make something that people want to eat. You know, that's good. Season it up, and it's dinner time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, think about how family oriented most cultures are. You know,
right?
You're not making made to order dishes to where I'm hooking up a dish, frying something for this one person, and the next order comes out. It's not a restaurant. It's
you're not a short order cook.
Right. Yeah, it's not a short order thing. It's let me make this dish for my family. This is going to stretch. If you want seconds, you can go get seconds. Right. We have leftovers.
Yeah, I'm not. This is not stuff where you're putting stuff in a little stack with a microgreen salad and some of that agar caviar and all that fancy stuff, man. You know, these are dishes that are made to feed people. These are family dishes, traditional dishes, and traditions change. Traditions run through families. So if your grandmother or mom didn't like something in their rice dressing or whatever dish, trust me, it's not gonna be there. You know, if your grandmother didn't like liver, your mom didn't like liver, well, guess what? I'm pretty sure your rice dressing is not gonna have liver in it.
Right.
But your family tradition is just part of the picture. It's not the whole. The whole picture is basically we all have a vastly different experience of cooking traditions in each of our families. Some people do it one way. KCP's grandmother made it with eggplant. My family made eggplant dressings with seafood. What's
seafood
wrong and what's
eggplant
right?
is delicious.
Nothing's wrong. Everything's right.
Right.
Because it's just a different tradition. It's just a different take on.
Exactly.
And I've had beef, like a beef and eggplant dressing before. Absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely.
Hold on. Let me stop you right there. That's I disagree. There is some wrong. Okay, some wrong has been done. Some dude put red beans in a goddamn Cajun rice dressing.
That's
and I'm outraged.
No, it has dirty rice. Get it right.
Oh, yeah. Whatever it was, the hell he called it. It was wrong, and you know you're wrong. You know you're wrong for this.
Right.
That is a B.
I need an apology. We all do.
B, that's an afterthought right there.
Oh,
that is straight out of left field, like something just crawled out of the primordial. Something just crawled out of the ooze and came up with that idea. It's like, let me throw some red beans, randomly some canned red beans. What is that doing, man?
Dude went to his pantry and was like, "What else can I throw in here?"
Yeah, right.
I got this can of kidney beans. I think this will add some color.
This gonna make it even dirtier.
Look, it's dirty because it's some trash. I am look.
Some trash.
I don't know if I can't remember if I explained this before. Like this is Louisiana talk right here. If something is trash, it's bad. But when we really want to say something's bad, we say that's some trash.
Some trash.
Some trash is a different level of trash.
That's way worse.
Elevated up about 5-6 steps. That is some trash. Do not put kidney beans in your dirty rice. Look for recipes from people from the state. Even if they just put meat in their rice and it's meat rice, I can forgive that because that's cooked to your taste. But red beans, this is just out of left field, man. Where did this come from?
We've been telling y'all this since season 1. Our DMs are open. If you need some, I'm literally I am a licensed consultant. Consult me. Any one of us, we will tell you what you need to know so that you can put the right information out there.
Exactly.
It's I don't know, man. It's like the cooking equivalent of a twitch or like a nervous. Oh, just throw some beans in there. It's like, what are you doing, man? It's just nonsensical.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. None.
It's dumb. Do not do this. Do not do this.
What is raw?
Find somebody else.
Raw
that
smelling.
Does.
Ooh, man. Smell the raw.
So I want to circle back to what Barbecue Brand said. He said that somebody said his rice dressing was good. Y'all, it's so good. Like he stirs it with his toes. It's so good.
That's Louisiana.
That's also Louisiana talk for it's so good. They stirred it with their foot. Like
you put something in it. It really
extra
means you
love.
You put your heart into it, man.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You care about it. You have to care about making food and doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Anytime Barbecue Brand says he's making rice dressing, I'm like, you got to put me some to the side. Save me some.
Rice dressing.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. I think because your savory elements remind me so much of my grandmother's rice dressing, her eggplant rice dressing. I think that's why I like it so much because it reminds me of that because it just tastes right to me. So, yeah.
I grew up poor, and my sister. Well, one of my sisters. I'm one of 7. I'm really one of 9. But my sister, my oldest sister, Juanita, would cook for all of us whenever I was younger. I'm the baby, and man. The food that she would cook, I just remember growing up and it was like, damn, this is good. And I was always in the kitchen trying to figure out when the food was ready versus trying to learn what she was doing. So she was always kicking me out of the kitchen. And then when I got on my own, went to college, I was like, damn, I sure would like to know how Nita made this. Or I sure would like to know how she made that. I thank God that she's still alive. And I would call her and go by the house and go visit and say, okay, it's time. Show me how you did this. I don't need you to tell me because I already know you stirred it with your toe and all of this and that. I'm about to stir it with my toe.
Right.
But I need the basics. I need to find out how you do what you do. Right. So then she started teaching me how to make her dishes. And now she's calling me like, man, that was good. How you did that? Okay. All right. The student is now the master, so It's all about heart. It's all about cooking what you love. It's all about putting some thought into what you're cooking. So, we have this podcast. We're going to go in on you, bar none. I'm not holding back any punches on any of y'all. I'm not scared of any of y'all. I don't care. I'm going in on you if you don't do the right thing. But at the base of all of this, you have to understand that we are very prideful and we love what we do. and we
Absolutely.
love cooking. So, it's all about that first.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's and for me learning how to cook, it was kind of like more of an observational thing. I have a pretty good memory, and I just watch my mom cook. And she never really she taught me some things, but she just let me. The older I got, the more I helped out. I helped out my grandmother cook too, so kind of picked up some things from her too. Like I don't know why nobody in my family can make corn makshu except me. And it's like I can do that. I can make dressing. I can make rice dressing, and that's two things I learned from her how to do those things. So, it's important to learn these
Brandon
things from
D's,
your family.
man,
Learn how
look,
to.
I feel like I talk about this every episode because every time you bring it up,
it's so good. It's really really good.
It's really just the right technique. It's just and a video is coming on that very soon. I'm not going to give any spoilers alert, but hey, we got to talk about next week. We're going to be at Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Absolutely.
So we are going to be competing there.
Yes.
So I'm going to be competing there. And I'm gonna have a couple of recruits, maybe two people over here that might be helping out. So
yeah.
So we are
Can't
we
wait.
are actually
they need our toes. They need our toes, B.
Yeah, we
Let's
we
get
are
it.
actually we are actually gonna cook one of my recipes for the open competition in the barbecue, and we are gonna release a video where we actually explain the process and go through the recipe and how to make it.
Mm-hmm. And your other dish that you're submitting is also a take on my great grandmother's recipe for a dessert.
Correct.
So
yeah, we could say it is bread pudding. I don't care about people trying to cut. You can't replicate what we've done. It's unreplicatable unless I tell you all the steps.
Right.
For competitions, you really have to amp up food, so we're kind of going a little bit over the top. So.
Absolutely.
But we will do some demonstrations on that too. There's some good recipes to learn from those too. So we are going to go to the rodeo. We're going to debut that recipe, which is I think it's pretty original, right, B?
Oh, I would absolutely say so for sure, and it's delicious. So.
Whew.
Y'all be on the lookout. We have a lot of just if you pay attention to the podcast, look out for other content too. We have some great stuff coming this year, and it's going to be a blast. Y'all going to have some fun with us.
Yes, we're going to increase the number of cooking videos. You're going to do rice dressing. You know what? I'll make a video on that too, just so people can see the process of what is I consider a more traditional version of it. And I think that's something that needs to be seen. Yeah. We have to show what things are originally. If you didn't show, like for example, what they make like haggis. Haggis is traditionally stuffed in like a sheep's stomach and made with all this stuff. And there's all kind of like, easier versions of it that don't have certain things in it, or lighter versions of it. But you have to understand where it comes from first to understand where you are. Right. Because let me tell you something. Back in the day, man. Meat, it was expensive, it was a valuable commodity and it needed to be stretched. And, if I have all this chicken liver and all this pork liver and all this other kind of offal, and I need to stretch out a little bit of scrap meat that I have and throw it with some starch and make a dish out of it, I'm damn well going to do it.
Yeah.
Access. I mean, food is all about access, guys. Right. It's what ingredients you have access to.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So with that all being said, I want to end it with our little quote of the night. And this comes to us from Paul Prudhomme. We all know Paul Prudhomme.
Paul P again?
Paul P.
My man.
Opelousas, Louisiana, born and raised.
Yes. So I hope I didn't do this one already. I don't think I did. But anyway, when the taste changes with every bite and the last bite tastes as good as the first, that's Cajun. Have I used that one? Have I used that one before? Okay.
I don't think so.
You haven't. You haven't.
I won't argue with that.
I think that was very fitting for this episode,
Yeah.
That just made me think about something before we go out. So going back to my business college roots, right? Taking business class in college, there was something called UDLs. UDLs is a fictitious unit of measure for happiness whenever you consume something. So like, let's say you're super hungry, you eat your first bite of pizza that may be worth 100 utils. Your second bite of pizza might be only worth 60 utils, right? It's not doesn't make you as happy as that first bite did.
Right.
So that makes me think about Cajun food. Cajun food defies the law of utils because that last bite tastes just as good as the first bite. We do it down here.
Oh,
Stop playing with us.
Right?
Nah.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a fun episode. So we're going to end that tonight. So everybody out there, keep stirring that pot. Peace.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one. We'll see y'all at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo next week.
Sure will. Good night, everyone.
Good night.